How do you know if you're trans? So in my case, I think it's important for me to talk about the phases of how I knew. Phase 1, toddler. My mom told me that when she tried to put dresses on me as a little kid, I used to rip them off. I hated dresses. Now, this doesn't always mean that your kid, if they're ripping off their dresses that you're trying to put on them, is going to be trans.
Then why do you mention it in a video about how to know if you're trans? Either it is a sign or it's not a sign. You can't have both. I'm sorry.
Phase 2, teenager. When I was around, I'd say around 13 years old, I saw an episode on this TV station called Logo, specifically for the queer community, about transgender people in the United States. And it opened my eyes to the fact that there was actually trans men out there.
Were you ever exposed to masculine women in your life growing up? Did you actually know that it's an option to be a masculine biological woman without needing to transition? Because I think it's really important that kids are exposed to that, to see a masculine woman or a feminine man, and hopefully both, of course. And the reason why that's important is so the kids don't grow up thinking the only way I can be myself is if I transition to the opposite sex.
I kept things hidden on the inside. I told myself, you know what, I know I'm a man, but I can't let anybody know that until I move out and I can be myself. I was a man on the inside, but not expressing it to the world, and I was miserable.
It's not possible to be a man on the inside and a woman on the outside. It sounds extremely irrational, and I consider it pseudo-religious to think that a man could be trapped in a woman's body. You are a woman with a mental condition that makes it unbearable for you to be a woman, to live your life as a woman. That's okay, but it doesn't mean that in reality, it is a fact that you're a man on the inside and a woman on the outside.
It took me so long to come to terms with the fact that I'm trans because I didn't realise that I didn't have to want to be a cis man to be trans.
Yes, you do. That's the whole point of being trans. Notice how these people say the word cis, which I never use because it's cringe and unnecessary, but they always say like it's a negative thing to be cis. And to me, that's a huge red flag if you think that you're trans, if you, at the same time, don't really like cis people, or you don't like to be acknowledged or seen as a cis person.
Like, I always just kind of felt like an androgynous person, but then I realised that I wasn't an androgynous woman, I was like an androgynous non-binary person.
That's the same thing.
Another thing that really determined to me that I wanted to do this with my transition is the thought of being on testosterone and being perceived as a man makes me feel so much better. I accept myself a hell of a lot more. I no longer worry about my weight. My body dysmorphia is not that bad, and I'm just overall a happy person. When my pronouns are out there, then people know how to address me and how to make me comfortable.
I see a lot of red flags here because this is a biological woman who has body dysmorphia, has problems with her weight, she admits it herself, and she doesn't want to be perceived as a woman in society. And on top of that, she doesn't want to be perceived as a cis person. I wouldn't consider her problems as gender dysphoria, so I really hope that she's not on testosterone because I don't think it will benefit her.
How do you know if you're trans? Well, for starters, the way you can diagnose it is typically gender dysphoria, but not all trans people have dysphoria.
Of course you need gender dysphoria to be trans. That's the whole point of not being a regular man or a woman. You are trans because of gender dysphoria, which is a mental disorder, something you cannot control feeling. Gender dysphoria is the only reason why someone would have a wish to be the opposite sex. In other words, you need to be uncomfortable with your birth sex in order to be uncomfortable with your birth sex. I know I sound a little bit stupid for clarifying this, but it's so stupid to claim that you don't need to feel uncomfortable with your body in order to transition. It's not only a stupid claim, this is dangerous to tell young children, because then a lot of teenagers will relate to this term and want to identify as trans and want to get a medical transition. We cannot let this happen.
So if you don't feel gender dysphoria, if you feel like you don't want to identify or that you don't identify with the gender that you were assigned at birth, you're trans.
No. And when you're saying if you don't want to identify as something, it sounds like it's a choice. And being a transsexual is not a choice. You sound a little bit ignorant here.
And there's tons of labels for stuff like that. If you feel like you're a girl, but you're also kind of not a girl, there's demi-girl, there's non-binary, there's labeled. If you feel like you're a boy, but you're also kind of not a boy, there's demi-boy, and then obviously gender fluid, there's trans man, there's trans woman. You can try testing out different pronouns, like if you're AMAB, you can try testing out she, her. If you're AFAB, you can try testing out he, him. Or just if you think you're trans, being like completely in the opposite thing. And then you can try they, them. You can try a mix of he and they or she and they. Figure out what makes you comfortable and what you like the best.
You're making it seem like it's a game for children. First of all, your gender is not a candy store where you can just pick your own gender and... oh my god. And second of all, gender is not something that you just try out. I mean, it's so dangerous to tell this to other people, especially children. You can just try to identify as trans. Oh, it's reversible. You can identify as trans and then go back if you're not. But think about the psychological aspect of it. And when you think about how the community really wants to push a physical transition to kids, I don't think that a lot of kids would just go back. A lot of these trans kids feel pressured by the trans community to transition because the trans community is where they get all of their friends from. The trans community always says, oh, you don't need surgeries and hormones to be trans, but for some reason, trans kids are losing their human rights if we don't put drugs in them, if we don't put them under the knife. What is really going on here?
Coming out as non-binary, I've had a number of people who I believe were questioning their gender ask me, like, Kat, how did you know you were non-binary? I usually just tell them that, like, girl and woman fit me the way that, like, an ill-fitting set of clothes might fit you. You could wear it, and it would sort of work, but you wouldn't feel good about yourself in it, and it wouldn't feel right on you. And that is how my assigned birth gender always felt to me.
This is on you, my friend. It's on you to decide how you think what being a woman is. If you think that there is a limit on how to be a woman, that's your problem. And you're just exposing yourself as intolerant as hell. A lot of people would feel uncomfortable if there's only one way to be a man or a woman, so I completely understand that. I understand the discomfort. I just don't agree that you have to be something else other than a man or a woman in order to feel comfortable. So if you're one of those people who think that I don't believe that non-binary people are real, of course the people are real. Their struggles, their feelings are real. But non-binary, the identity, that we have to view it as a gender or a gender identity, is not real. These people actually have a choice to feel comfortable as men and women. I didn't have that choice because of my chemical imbalance in my brain. If she just acknowledged that she can be herself and still be a woman, she wouldn't feel uncomfortable. If I had that choice, me personally, I would not look and sound like this. Thinking that you're non-binary is 100% a choice. You can't argue with that.
There's a few things that go into gender. There's your body that you live in and your conceptualization of your body as like a gendered thing. There's the social role that you occupy and how people see you and how they treat you because of their perception of your gender. And then there's also just what exists in your head and like who you know yourself to be. I never performed my birth gender, like girl, woman, very well. I maybe sometimes performed it passively, and because people were more comfortable seeing me that way, that's what they saw. But like, I knew I wasn't performing it well. It was like I was in a play and I was getting screamed at for not knowing all the lines, but no one had ever given me a script.
Here's the thing. Being a woman should not feel like an act. Take notes, Dylan Mulvaney. You cannot fail at being a woman. You just are one. That's the beauty of gender. It's the beauty of this world. You cannot fail at what you already are, what you biologically cannot change. You are yet again implying that you have to act a certain way, you have to be a certain way in order to be a woman. If you don't act like that, you're not a woman. I think the beauty of only acknowledging two genders is you have so much freedom to be whoever you want to be. Your gender doesn't change because of that. You can be the most masculine woman in the world. You can be the most feminine man in the world. your gender doesn't change. Your gender embraces you for who you are. Can't you see the tolerance and the beauty of that? I do acknowledge that some of these people are struggling and I want to help them. However, if they don't know what reality is, it's hard. It's hard to help them. That's all I have for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more content like this, remember to hit subscribe and the notification bell. If you want, you can support me with a small donation under Super Thanks, and I would be really, really grateful because it does help me a ton. So thank you. I hope to see you all in my next video. Peace out.